been doing this for a long time now. Help them start to rebuild.
So this episode is long overdue.
Yes.
I think we planned to record this when Amela turned 1 to kind of recap parenthood and everything that we wish we knew, things that we're learning now that Amela is 1.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely want to jump back, and I know it's hard to remember right now, but after we got married in 2018, I think we actively started trying already.
Yeah.
We jumped right on that.
We were just ready.
Yeah, I think it was at that point where, of course, we were looking forward to it. And it was one of those things that, we didn't know, even if we could at that time, right? I think there was one thing that now I look back and I realized it was harder than I thought it was going to be. I don't know if you felt the same way, but when we were actively trying to get pregnant, what was going on? What did we learn? What did you learn? And, what are things that we wish we knew?
Well, I didn't obviously know how exactly what you said, like how long it would take for, especially after our first baby. And then, trying to recover from that and waiting months after to really try again. And I don't know if we went into detail about, in the other podcast regarding us getting pregnant afterwards. And how long it took. It took like 6 months. Yeah,
I think we talked about it a little bit and the adjustments we made after the first baby that we lost. But I felt like it was harder than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, in like what way for you?
No, it was just more of trying. Thinking, I honestly thought, and this is growing up, and I don't know if like our parents and, people that raised us, they tell you that like it's so easy to get pregnant. I guess they instill this fear of like, don't do it because you're gonna get pregnant.
Yeah,
and you're not ready. The fact that we were ready at the time, we were married and everything. Financially, we were stable enough to have a family, to start a family. It took longer than expected for me. I just felt like, like you just get pregnant.
Yeah,
like it was a thing that happens. And obviously, we went into that in the previous podcast of conceiving our first child and then losing the first baby after roughly 10 weeks. Mm-hmm. Like you said, we started 6 months again after that. We made adjustments, I think.
Yeah.
That's important to note that, what were some adjustments that you made? To prepare for trying to have a baby again.
Yeah. Of course, like I talked about how I felt like partly it was my fault that maybe my body wasn't ready or strong enough to carry a baby. So I pretty much change my diet or try to eat healthier. I really worked out a lot more. Mm-hmm. And you're a witness to that. And, I'm just taking like supplements, like my vitamins, just really overall health, just really trying to, like better my immune system and everything. So I think that was like the biggest adjustment, and just thinking that, get my body stronger. So my body will be strong enough to carry a baby and to nourish the baby.
Yeah.
And I think that was like the biggest adjustment. And also just my mindset, after losing the first baby, it's like a big test to see when you try again, there's that fear of it happening again, or is it going to happen again, or can I even have babies? So I think just having my mindset, like God is in control, and just trying to tell myself that. And, there's not much I can do. There's only so much I can do, really. And if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If it's not, then, just keep trying.
Yeah.
And, hoping for better for us. And that's pretty much how I take on it.
And this speaks to a lot of people right now who are trying to have kids or they're planning to have kids, because you did make some substantial adjustments, and it was like supplements for sure, working out, diet, exercise, and you're not you don't have a big build. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people that see you now, they're like, did you even have a baby? But it was more of the body's like hormones and the immune system and the ability to for the body to adapt
Yeah.
in that condition where you're growing another child.
Just taking like supplements and, like trying to get my hormones back to how they
Balance.
used to be.
Well, how long did it take after we lost the first baby? How long did it take for you to feel like your hormones were balanced again?
I mean, I honestly, after having the surgery, I felt okay. Like I was trying to monitor how my periods were and everything, and it was heavier in the beginning, but I think so it was just like a few months after. And I think obviously the thing that was holding us back, or me back, was just being scared still. The fear.
I think we were both afraid at some point I mean, it felt like almost like it would paralyze us.
Yeah.
And make us think that we weren't ready, or that, kind of accepting already that we can't, if anything. I mean, I feel like that helped us a lot. But I mean, definitely what I wanted to highlight was that it was a lot harder and it took a lot longer than I thought to actually get pregnant and, to start that journey of the 9 months. Right. And this is not to say, or for younger people to think like, well, just like no holds barred, obviously. Like, I mean, what we wanted for sure was to be emotionally ready for it, to be financially ready and stable enough to start a family. And I think that was the most responsible thing that our families taught us, was just, of course we're leaving everything in God's hands, but we have to think of quality of life. We have to be prepared for, the challenges that comes along with having a child.
Yeah.
Right. I don't personally want to bring a child into the world and for us not to be ready, not be ready to provide what the baby needs. And I mean, as soon as we did conceive the second time, right, with Amela, I think there was a lot of changes and adjustments that we both had to make, not only physically but mentally and emotionally. I have like different things that came up in my head about how I needed to be and the type of person I needed to be now. What was your mindset? What was like your how did you feel about becoming a mother?
Like while being pregnant still.
Yeah, as soon as you were pregnant, and then like that 9 months, there's a lot of changes that goes on, obviously. But more so, what was going through your head at first? I
mean, you know me, like ever since I was younger, I loved kids. And honestly, kids I'd be just attracted to kids. And I was honestly excited and happy that, wow, I'm actually going to become a mom and have a child of my own. And it was also just nerve-wracking just because, you see parents, you see family members have babies, and when you play with them, it's like, okay, here you go. You can have them back. It's just like a temporary. Yeah,
you play with them and then you give them back to the parents.
Yeah, so you don't see behind the scenes and what the parents have to go through at home. So for me, it was just excitement and of course joy. And I'm pretty sure that's how every mom would feel finding out that they're pregnant. But of course, being prepared of the unknown and what to expect. And it's kind of hard to really, you hear from other moms or family friends and friends that, oh, it's tough, it's going to change your life, be ready to not sleep anymore. You'd hear
heard all
that
stuff. Yeah, we heard all that crap from everybody.
And obviously it's you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. I'm prepared. Or you'd be like, oh, you get nervous because it's you don't know how it's really going to be. But I think my first, obviously, emotion was just excitement.
Yeah, of course, I was excited. I think one thing that came up when you got pregnant was this protective thing in me. I wanted to be very protective of you and of our baby, of course. And I don't know if this is a dad thing where it happened. It was like a switch emotionally where I felt emotionally I was a little bit softer, coming from the grind of working a lot. And then, once we got married and we got our own place, there was that whole hard grind on that part. And then now that we are I felt like I softened up emotionally, but mentally there was a switch in me that felt like I had to become more protective. I guess a hunter kind of mentality came out where it was kind of I need to provide, and I continued to work as much as I could when you were pregnant because once the baby was here, I knew that I had to make some adjustments. But I think the first like thing that switched in me was this mentality of I want to be a provider, I want to be a protector. And that caused me to work out more. I mean, I talked to some of my friends about like how I feel like I prepared to be a dad. It was just maybe a little twisted to some people, but yeah, like I would imagine when I'd be working out, I'd be training, it would be to protect. Mm-hmm. It would be to get stronger for you or for our child.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously we didn't even know, you know, our child yet. But whoever it was going to be, I always imagined it to be me as the protector for you and our baby. And of course, physically, you know, you started getting bigger and bigger. Obviously, that happens when you're growing a baby. There was definitely a lot more physical demand on my part. And I definitely felt that. I felt that, you know, I didn't want you to lift a lot of things. I didn't want you to have to, you know, for the risks.
Yeah.
Right. That was definitely a big thing. Like when we were preparing. I noticed though near the end, like I guess they call it nesting, right?
Yeah.
When we moved to our new place in preparation for Amela, I did notice this sudden burst of energy in you where when you were nesting for sure, like you were trying to prepare our home and the room for the baby. Mm-hmm. And it was, I don't know, was that like a natural thing that you felt or you just had this urge to do it?
Yeah, I mean, because of course, it's like knowing that the baby's coming, like you want to make sure you're prepared and that everything's ready for her, you know, for the baby to come. So I think, and you know, that's actually like a natural thing that they say, you know, nesting. And it's so true. Like I would hear it all the time, like, oh, you know, like in your third trimester, you're going to start nesting. Yeah. And it's true. It's just like that motherly care.
Yeah.
You know, and I definitely noticed like with you especially when you found out we were having a girl. I remember like that's when I saw a switch in you too, where it's like, crap, I'm gonna have a girl. So of course, like that natural like father and you know like you being the protector, like side came out, and I appreciated it because you know like I saw that you were ready to actually be a dad and like have a child, and more so having a daughter, especially like in this crazy world now. Yeah. It's scary. Like honestly, it is. It still is, but knowing that you were like that and being prepared, like it made me feel more secure and safe and more prepared that, you know, us as a family is going to be okay. Yeah.
And I mean, I would obviously it would be the same if we were having a son. I think there is that slight difference. Element, yeah, there's a slight difference there where I tried to understand more from our parents and, you know, people that raised us, like parent figures, father figures, mother figures, growing up, and I guess you try to construct the best qualities into one, you know, and you try to become somebody that exhibits all those qualities. And I think for sure becoming or knowing that I was going to be a girl dad, there's definitely a lot of fear because, I mean, yeah, like you said, the world is crazy, and you know, I mean, to be honest with you, I was afraid to have a girl. I honestly thought we were going to have a boy. All the signs were all the freaking, what do you call them? Like old wives' tales that, you know, oh, you're going to have a boy. And like the majority said boy.
Yeah.
And then, you know, on our gender reveal, obviously I was shocked. I see how it was fate and it was destiny because it changed me.
It did. And I always told you, like, I think deep down inside, I knew we were going to have a girl because I think you were meant to have a girl first. And
why?
I think I don't know, just, to soften you up a little bit.
Shit. I mean, a lot of people don't know that I have a very hard, stubborn side.
You do.
And I think it stems from, you know, the family that I come from, you know, I don't know. I don't want to say I'm like stern all the time.
No, but I can definitely see that stubborn side in Mela now. I know where she gets it.
You know, she gets it from you, dude. I don't know what you're talking about. When we found out we were having Mela, I thought back to, I mean, I was already ready to raise a son to be strong like me.
Yeah, I remember that.
And, you know, I books came into my office, into my space, and I started reading books about, you know, raising men in the world. That's why I felt like I wasn't forcing it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I just came across things like that. And then as soon as we found out it was a girl, I was like, whoa, shoot, this is different. the more protector came out, but also this tender side of me, I feel like was needed. And that was a big shock for me. I mean, I do see myself as like very firm in my beliefs, like very, I have a lot of conviction for my beliefs and what I believe in. Not to say that I don't anymore, but I see that there's this element of me now that has to balance that out and not be so aggressive with everything, to be a little bit more patient with things. I think the biggest challenge for me at that time was to soften up and to be a little bit more tender on how I approach situations and people. And, me, I come from a family of a lot of men. And I have a younger sister. I have a few female cousins, but I grew up around a lot of men, and I look to my biological grandfather as someone who I came from. I am like him. And my dad is like him. I'm like my dad, and I think it was meant to be because I find myself feeling a little bit more well-rounded now. It forced me to slow down and be a little bit lighter, a little bit easier on my approach to things. And Amela for sure tests me even more now.
And it's funny too, because like the fact that you say you've softened up a little bit, I feel like I'm a little bit the opposite. You know how like people, I mean, not everybody sees another side of me. So, obviously I'm like,
what side are you talking about? The ghetto side or the freaking? No,
that too. But no, especially like having Mela, I feel like I'm more stern.
You are
in a way, and I feel like that side's coming out more, like that motherly side, and just really, trying to put my foot down. And
you're more of a disciplinarian than I thought you would be. To be honest with you.
And I think that also comes along with working with kids. And I mean, we can get to that later, but I think that's like a big part of it. But I do feel that side of me come out more. And I know a lot of people don't see that side of me, but when it comes to Mela, I think I've grown in that way.
Well, I mean, I've seen you with your younger cousins and everything, and knowing how you are at work and knowing the situations you got to deal with kids. It's really no surprise to me that you're a disciplinarian. I mean, the way you do discipline Mela, I can tell that you get a lot of it from what you see at work. And I mean, we can talk about that. What played a lot in my head was observing all types of parents and observing children.
Oh yeah.
And then now knowing that we're going to be parents, we have to pick and choose what type of parents we have to be, and what parenting works, what parenting is not so good. Exactly. And you see that all the time at work.
And it really depends on the kids too, on their temperament, because every kid's different. Everybody, like every kid responds to like different types of like discipline. Some work, some doesn't. So it's kind of like seeing that and knowing how Mela is, like we're seeing like what works and what doesn't. And it's like you try to have like that patience with her because she doesn't know better. Like she just pretty much, it's just like her instinct to just let out her emotion or frustration. And that's the only way she can express it.
Sometimes it's in the form of growling and like what the no. And that's a big surprise to me because working in mental health, and I worked with adolescents, some as young as 12. I saw how the family played such a big role in how a kid is brought up and how their attitudes are and their behavior. And then we have Mela, and she gets mad. You could tell, like innately, it's just in her nature. When she gets mad, like she gets frustrated, she growls or whatever.
if like she's trying to tell us something or trying to get our attention and we don't listen to her, she's like, ah!
Yeah, she'll just like get frustrated and growl or scream or whatever. And we're like, I don't know where she gets that from. Maybe, I don't know, but naturally that happened. And it was like, oh, so it is both nature and nurture. It's also naturally who we are, and then growing up in this environment. And like you said, kids respond differently to it, and we're still figuring that out as best as we can. We can have this path and approach on how to discipline our kids, how to raise our children, but we also have to listen and observe them on how they respond. Because if I take this, it's weird because if I take this approach with Mela and I'm very strict and stern, I feel like she gets more frustrated with me and she pulls away.
Yeah.
And she'll treat me with more attitude. And I'm like, girl, you got that from your mom, man. But now I realize that it's not just the environment.
Yeah.
There is some natural tendencies that we have, right? I mean, that's one thing I learned now. Like, I mean, she's 16 months now.
Yeah.
She's 16 months old, over a year old. And I think we've both learned so much about being parents. What's one thing you wish you knew now that we can look back at our first year of being parents?
I mean, I think more just of the adjustment. You hear it all the time that it's going to be a big adjustment. Your life's going to be different. And it's true, but I just feel like I wish I was more prepared for that feeling and for like that reality check that it is different. Because, for one thing, yeah, they're always going to come first. But actually going through it, it was different. It's hard, especially it got harder when the fact that it was during the pandemic, like literally like the peak of it, like giving birth at the peak of COVID in April, and just having to be pretty much like locked down in your house, like you can't go anywhere. I think just the fact like knowing that we couldn't, it's just that feeling of, like I don't know exactly how to describe it, but I felt like I did have like slight baby blues, but at the same time, I think just being in lockdown made it worse. Because, just having to go through that whole routine, like every single day. I mean, it was good just to be home as a family, like especially just seeing her grow like that and spending every minute with each other. But I feel like we didn't get to really like go out and, like as a family and just get like that simple, like fresh air. We would take walks. But I think that was like the hardest thing for me was just having to live in that routine, like every single day, especially like breastfeeding her, like waking up, breastfeeding her, like getting used to waking up every 2 to 3 hours. That was hard. Like, yeah, you hear it, but it's like, oh, okay. But actually going through it, it's like, damn. Yeah. It's tough. And you just get so exhausted.
Yeah. And there was that time where I think we made it a point to always check in on each other. Yeah. And I think that was one big adjustment that I had to make was that, in that whole routine of like the first few months, obviously your focus is Amela and feeding her around the clock, like every 2 hours, breastfeeding, pumping, and all this stuff. I took it upon myself to be like, as much as I can, I'm going to do everything else in the house, whether it be grocery shopping or whatever. There was a time, and I think we had this maybe, I don't know, a couple months, 3 months in where...
Yeah, before I went to work, definitely.
Yeah, we kind of had this talk where it was, I was checking on you like, hey, are you okay? And I remember you telling me that it's just overwhelming. Yeah. And not to say that I chalk it up to baby blues. I think everybody goes through that where it is overwhelming. And there's times where, there was a time where Mela wasn't really latching and she wasn't really wanting to eat, or to be breastfed. And that was one big moment where I look back and think, what do we do?
Yeah, I think too, like wishing that it was okay to feel that way, like feeling that frustration. Because of course, like being a first-time mom, breastfeeding, like you hear stories about like how hard it is and how much work it is. And yeah, that time when she just didn't want to latch and I was getting so frustrated, but it's not her fault. I can't take it on her. Exactly. And it's kind of like, what do I do? Like I feel so helpless. Yeah. Because I'm her source of food and she doesn't want to eat from me. And it's like, what do I do? And I think that was one of the hardest parts too, was just breastfeeding in general. That's like a whole journey on its own and trying to figure that out.
I feel like it looks, the way I looked at it, looking back now, it feels like you have a whole different life. Oh yeah. When you're breastfeeding. It's where like everything is on top of it. Like breastfeeding is throughout everything. And it's like a whole different life when you're in that mode.
Yeah. And just trying to figure out like her eating schedules and stuff. And yeah, just trying to figure everything out.
Yeah. And then like after all the phases that you went through, the ebbs and flows, like there's times where you felt overwhelmed. And then I could notice that, there's like a sudden like, burst or a brighter mood that you're in and things are good. And I think there was a time that you checked on me soon after that. And I remember breaking down because at that point, you know, what I realized was I'm not going to be priority anymore as your husband. You know, like your attention is Amela. And that was one thing I had to get over, not being your number one anymore. And I think every couple ends up going through that where, you know, the baby becomes such a focus. And this is me speaking to all the dads out there, because I've talked to a lot of dads too, new fathers and old fathers, and we've all talked, and not just for the 9 months, it's for the first, I mean, it's years of when, you know, you're trying to have kids and you become pregnant and you're raising kids. You know, in this role that I want to take up as a father, I realized that I won't be priority for anybody anymore. And that's okay. And that's what it takes to be a father. It's okay for me to look out for myself also, because in order for us to have this protection, to have this ability to provide, we have to take care of ourselves too. You know, we have to be taken care of also. So on top of everything that I want to make sure everything's in line for you and for Amela, I remember telling myself, I can't lose myself because I'm doing that. Because they, you know, you and Mela are me. And it was one thing I really had to adjust and learn from, because it almost felt like there was a time, and when you reached out, when you checked on me that one time, it was kind of like, I wish someone asked me how I was doing.
Yeah, I remember that.
You know, and it's not your fault. It's not anybody else's fault. Every time people see us, family, friends, whatever, it's, how's the baby? Like, how's mommy? Right?
Yeah.
And I remember getting angry at some point. It was just like, damn, dude, like no one fucking cares about me.
Yeah, I remember that.
And what I learned was that that's natural and it happens. And it's no one's fault.
Yeah.
It's, of course, people are worried about the baby first. They're worried about the mom first. And that was one thing I want to shout out to all, you know, dads too, that, hey, you know, I get it.
Yeah.
And it's okay. We don't have to get mad about it. And because I've gotten mad about it in the past, I realized that it wasn't what was needed.
Yeah. I mean, like we had like small arguments about that too.
Yeah.
And I think just for me, trying to adjust to this new role of being a mother, and I mean, obviously we both have a child, so it's like having to adjust to somebody else depending on you and having to care for them. But obviously, like as a mother, I feel like it is different for mothers than fathers. Because obviously, you know, like we're the ones who carry them for like 9-10 months. So I just think like that instinct of just having to always make sure that they're okay. And sometimes, like, you know, like I would get advice, or people tell me, you know, you have to take care of yourself too, or you have to like make sure you don't forget that, you know, you have a husband, or, you know, it's like stuff like that. It's like you hear it, but same thing, like I said, it's like going through it, it's hard. You have to figure it on your own.
Yeah.
Like you don't realize it until you're going through the motions of like everyday life and adjusting to it.
Yeah.
It came to a point where I wasn't even taking care of myself and like how I felt. It was just more like, okay, is Amela okay? I have to feed her, change her, put her to sleep, making sure she's okay. It was hard. Yeah.
And I think what we're saying now is the communication that we had throughout all those things is what really helped us get through it. That if, you know, there was times where, you know, each of us noticed it in the other, and it was like, hey, you know, let's talk.
Yeah.
Because I noticed that I'm getting to this point where, you know, I don't feel like myself.
No, yeah. And I think that it was like, I'm glad that, you know, you're the one who's more like open to conversations, and I'm just, you know.
I don't want to say that I'm just naturally like that. I definitely force myself to be like that because of what I've seen. And a lot of people that end up, you know, with mental health issues and things like that, it always stems from some sort of lack of communication.
Yeah.
And I think this happens with families and other people where they don't communicate it. And then that one thing, it festers, and then it spreads throughout, and it grows into something too big for each person to handle.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make it a point where even if it was uncomfortable, it's difficult to bring up things like that, where it's like, you know, I got to be vulnerable. I got to be honest with you. And people might think like, oh, it's a sign of weakness or whatever. To me, it's worth it.
Yeah.
If it's going to help both of us, it gets us on the same page again. and we need to kind of refresh and get to this place of, all right, let's get our priorities straight. This is how I feel. This is how you feel. How can we make this work? And that's one thing I think we can vouch for, and we can kind of promote and encourage for, other families and whatever. Not to say that no one else is doing that. It's, we acknowledge that the communication is critical.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in this first year that we've had Mela, that we have to talk. And it is uncomfortable sometimes. And it's frustrating sometimes. If you can talk to your partner and your family about it, I promise you it will be better. And it will make everything easier.
Yeah.
Because it's already hard.
Yeah.
Anything, it doesn't make it better if you don't communicate. It just adds on top of everything. And not to say like we got it all figured out. I mean, Mela is 16 months now. We can talk about these things that we've dealt with in this past year. But we're still learning so much more. There's so much more happening. Like at her first birthday, this is the first time, like, my family doesn't really throw a lot of parties.
Yeah.
And, it was one of those things where I didn't realize how much a party for our child doesn't feel like a party. It feels like a lot of responsibility and a lot of work to do.
Yeah. I mean, and like opposite for me, like my family is so used to throwing parties. So I'm just like used to it.
I know. It was an adjustment for me for sure. Especially at the end of the day, like there's so many gifts and like people shower Mela with gifts and it's so beautiful. I remember going to work the next day like super drained. And it's such an adjustment for me to have obviously our child learn life and live life from the beginning. I don't remember when I was 1 and when I was throwing a party, but to see her and to have these life experiences from the beginning of her life is just so amazing to me that it's almost like I'm reliving it through her. Despite all the challenges, it was one of those things where I look back and I think, how beautiful is this that I can witness someone's life from the beginning?
Yeah.
Like I said, we were going to record this at her 1 year, but things changed, man. Like, things happen in life and we got work, we got other things to do. And we're finally recording this now, but since she turned 1, I think there's so many growth spurts and developments in her. Like she's hitting those milestones, and it's such a beautiful thing. I mean, what do you think? Like your favorite moment in her milestones, and like when she's learning things now. What's your favorite moments
as of right now? I mean, just to see like how fast she grows and like how smart like she is, and just like how kids are. And it's crazy how fast she just picks up, especially like now that after she learned to walk, like she started walking like 3 days after her birthday. Like she took like 2-3 steps, and it's just from then on it was just like,
I think within that week she was walking,
and it's just crazy to see how fast they grow. But I think she's, we always say that, oh, we miss her when she was this small. Oh, we miss her. We always miss like the first or the few months before, like the one she actually is
previous stage
now. Yeah. And it's funny because she's at such a fun age right now where she's literally a sponge. Like she catches on words. Like she's already talking, saying little words here and there.
Yeah, it's funny.
So, and I think just seeing how her personality is forming and just her character and just how innocent she is.
Yeah.
And just to see like her grow as a person. And obviously we see how her temperament is already. We see how like she's a funny girl. She's a sweet, sassy.
She's sassy as hell.
Like,
yeah.
I don't even know like where she gets that from. But
you don't know, right?
But yeah, I just think like it's just fun watching her grow right now, and I'm really enjoying her age.
Yeah.
And
she's like a sponge right now.
Yeah.
Like she'll copy what we say.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh shoot, this is bad.
Watch what we say already.
I know. And we'd make her say words as a joke, and then she would actually say it. Like, oh no.
Well, that's you, not me.
Okay.
But what about you?
I think what was the biggest, I guess a special thing that I saw in her was that she's so social.
She is.
And she like loves other kids. And this is, speaking of the pandemic where we were locked down for, months when she was born. I was always worried that she was going to be like socially awkward and not really, we didn't really get to expose her to other kids until after months later. But now every time she sees a kid, even if we're walking by at the grocery store, she'll like wave to people and anybody. Yeah, you're right.
She like tilts her head to one side and she
just,
waves,
like, waves
with her little stiff hand. But the thing is, that's what I was scared too, was because she was super like clingy, and she still is, but she had a really bad stranger danger even when she was like months old. Yeah. Even like when she was a little bit too young to even have that much fear. So that's why I was worried. I'm like, man, she's
clingy.
Like, she's a pandemic baby.
Stage 5 clinger.
Seriously.
Separation anxiety for sure.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing. Like she wouldn't go to anybody. I mean, she still is kind of hesitant to like be picked up, but she'll talk to you and play with you like when you're in front of her and stuff.
I think people have seen some stories that you put out there where she would like be carried by somebody and she'll cry.
Oh yeah. And so that's why. And I was worried about that, but yeah, that's true. It's like she's grown so much to where she's really social. Yeah,
she's really social, and it's fun to watch.
Yeah.
She's a little too social though. Like she's trying to hug everybody. Yeah. And like her with her friends, like she's just like wants to like hug everybody. Like it's good, it's beautiful, and it's natural. Yeah. That's the thing. And
she's just loving.
Yeah, she is. And I think that's what people love about her too. And that's one of the special things that I realized when she started growing. Yeah. Is that she's just a social butterfly. She is. She loves being around people. She loves talking and playing with people. She has a lot of those like tricks, that people love to watch.
Yeah. And it's crazy how fast like she just picks up on that. Like we show her a few times and she does it. Yeah. And I mean, there was a few times where like you would try to get her, you would try to teach her something and she wouldn't do it. And then like a couple weeks later, out of nowhere, she'll do it. Yeah. She just like observes. She's really observant.
Like she basically ingrained it in her without doing it yet. Mm-hmm. But she like programmed it. Yeah. And then she'll like do it at a certain time later.
It's like crazy. As much as I miss her being just a baby, like not walking, not talking, just won't push away when we try to hug or kiss her sometimes. Yeah. But she's just so loving and sweet too, or she would just like caress your face or, just, and when she kisses, she's like, mwah.
Yeah, she does.
It just melts my heart, and it's just crazy.
I think she gets that from us for sure.
Yeah. We show affection to each other. So even when she would laugh, or she would laugh when we would hug each other before. Mm-hmm. But
and that's one thing I read about it a little bit, but also, watching some, videos and things about growth and development. It's important that us as parents display the affection. Mm-hmm. And that, that mommy loves daddy, daddy loves mommy. Yeah. And the kid sees that from both sides. And that's one of the things that really shapes them in their relationships with both of us. Yeah. And it is so true to see like how we are to each other. She picks up on that, and she's learning so much just from that. Like she's literally like a sponge. Like I know it's like a joke, like in movies, like they're like a sponge, but they really are. Yeah. They're observing everything. Mm-hmm. And I mean that's a whole thing on its own. And I mean since then, I wanted to highlight now that we just got back from our first trip with her, and it was a totally different way to travel for sure. Yeah. We went to Hawaii, and her at 16 months, we were kind of celebrating her too. To bring along for a few of our friends' birthdays. Yeah. And we were with, a group of friends and their kids too. We're celebrating them. It was definitely a challenge. A lot of anxiety before we went. Mm-hmm. Overall, I think she did better than I thought she was going to be.
Yeah, she did.
But I also attribute that to you and how you prepared her for the trip and how you tried to strategically plan out how to do things for our flight and things like that. I don't know. Overall, like we just got back this week, so it's like how do you feel like the trip went for her first time?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it went better than I expected. Yeah. Because I would hear stories or people and family would tell me, "Oh, just give her Benadryl on the plane. Give her Benadryl." Yeah, I know. But of course, like that was my backup plan. Like if she was really acting up, if she was crying the whole flight, I would have. But I just wanted to see how she would do without it first. Yeah. And luckily and thankfully, she fell asleep the first hour, both back in, like going there and coming back. She fell asleep for the first hour for takeoff. Yep. And I think like it was harder coming back because she was getting more restless. and, you know, just trying to like distract her with like different things. And she would just get bored easily. So, I mean, I think it was a lot tougher coming back, but
Yeah.
I mean, overall, she did really good. And
Yeah.
just being there in a different place, a different state, I think it helped too that we were in a group. So it wasn't just us, so she can like interact with different people.
Yeah.
And it was just fun to like watch her, you know, interact with everybody and see how comfortable she got like right away. But just traveling with a toddler alone, even just packing, having to,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I mean, you know me, I already overpack for myself, and having to pack for another person and overpacking for them. It's like, especially with a baby, you know, like they get dirty, you just need a change of clothes like all
Yeah.
the time. But
Yeah.
she did really good not having to change.
Yeah.
But just, yeah, having to think about another person, especially, you know, like us in the pandemic right now and just our first time traveling together as a family. Of course, there was that fear
Yeah.
and that anxiety of not knowing what could happen, what's going to happen, how is she going to be, is she going to get sick, or, you know, just stuff like that. It's that anxiety level was definitely up, but I think we did a pretty good job in, you know, preparing and just kind of going with the flow and just seeing what happens.
Yeah, it's so different from just traveling, like
Us
just
too,
us.
yeah.
Yeah. It did help that we were with a group. But there was this fear and worry, you know, if something was gonna happen, you know?
Yeah.
And even walking around in the city and stuff, like, it's very different. Knowing that we're so far from home too.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, it's not that far, obviously, but I think it was a big test for me to see how we could do it, to travel to a different place. It's a milestone for me, I think, for us to travel on a trip like this. You know, flying on an airplane, being in a different city, getting through that makes me feel like a lot better, you know, and more excited to travel more.
More, yeah.
And to think that she's just, you know, a year and 4 months old, there's so much more that she's going to experience, you know, and I'm excited for that,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm thankful that we're able to do that for her, to bring her around already, on top of everything, on top of all the worries and fears that we have as parents. Who knows what's in store for us? I think the number one question that we get now is, when's number 2?
Yeah. I mean, that's always.
Yeah, it's funny because like when you just get married, or when you're dating and people ask you, when are you getting married? And then you get married and they're like, when are you having kids? And then you have a kid, they're like, when's the second
I
one?
just saw a video.
Oh, really?
Of that, yeah.
Oh, shoot. But that's, I mean, naturally that's how it
Yeah.
is. And I get it. There's so much more in store for us, I think. You know?
I mean, I definitely obviously, we do want another kid. And, you know, especially with Mela being at her age right now, I do kind of want them close, you know, close in age. But yeah, I mean, just kind of like going back with just that fear again, you know, like the anxiety of obviously like having another kid. But and then just, you know, watching her grow and like going back to when I said, you know, I work with kids, you know, I work in La Melinda, and just seeing the different situations that could happen or that happen to these kids, or
Yeah.
it just makes me so much more like paranoid. Like, I didn't realize how paranoid I was. Like for every little thing, like I see kids like who have like simply like the seizure kids. They don't even know. And it's like when Mela just stares off or something, I'm just like, I try to get her attention, like, Mela, are you okay? Like I try to like, you know, see if she's alert. And I didn't realize how paranoid I was until, you know, like I hear like other friends from before. It's like, oh yeah, I can't work with kids because they have kids. I'd be like, oh, you know, like it's fine. Like I'm fine. But actually having a toddler now, that she can like get hurt or, you know, something like that.
Because you work with the kids at their most vulnerable state. Like they already got injured or something like did happen already.
So nerve-wracking. And I think that's like one of the things too that I wish I was prepared for, was just the worry. I mean, of course, the worry is always going to be there. Yeah. But just working with kids and seeing what could happen, it scares me. But, you know, I just have like that faith, and, you know, we both do. But That's definitely something that
I don't think it's ever gonna go away.
Yeah.
And it always goes. I always go to my motto, like, expect the best things to happen, but prepare for the worst.
Mm-hmm.
That way, you're never really surprised.
Yeah.
But expecting that the best things can happen, it's living in that state of, allowing life to be what it is and not to live in that fear too much.
Yeah.
Because we definitely see some people that live in that fear, and they overprotect their kids.
Yeah.
They over shelter them.
Yeah.
And that's also not healthy either.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a weird balance that we're trying to find.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me that people have like multiple kids. Like, wow, we only have one and we already feel this.
I know. I have some friends too who feel the same.
See, but now, a lot of our friends are pregnant and they're, they're expecting, and it's amazing. I'll ask you right now on the podcast, are you catching baby fever?
I am. Like I told you before, like I miss being pregnant. As weird as that sounds.
You miss your belly?
I miss my belly. Like, and just like that feeling of, somebody growing inside of you, feeling like the little flutters, kicks in and stuff. Like I don't miss like the nausea and all that stuff. Yeah. But I do, especially working with babies. Like I get little babies at work too, and holding them, wishing, like remembering how Mela was this small and wishing she can be this small.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the fact that a lot of our friends are expecting, and there's a lot more talk about babies again.
Yeah. And like trying again.
Yeah. And I'm sure like you want to be pregnant with your friends too. Like there's that feeling too of like being pregnant with people.
Yeah.
Because you had a few people pregnant while you were pregnant too, right?
Yeah.
And you were talking to all of them.
Yeah, you just have like that camaraderie and just, somebody to talk with and to see like how they're feeling. Are you going through this? Are you going through that?
Yeah.
And like that's another thing too that I wanted to talk about too is when you have a baby and being pregnant, and when you have a child, you don't realize how much you compare yourself to other moms, or you compare your kids to other kids. And I wish that was something that I knew too. You hear like mom shaming and stuff because, there's some moms that do certain things and are against stuff or judge other moms for this and that. But I think that was another thing I was like struggling with too. So especially like in the beginning
with development, you mean with
that too, and just raising them in general. Like simply, what do you feed your kid? Like some moms would never feed their kids frozen food, would only do like healthy food, organic food. Yeah. But it's like you feel that mom guilt. It's like, oh, they're raising their kid like this.
Should I
and
not?
I'm doing this and stuff. And it's really hard to get out of your head and to to not compare yourself.
Yeah.
Or to think like if you're a bad mom for not doing this or doing that. And I think that's like one struggle. I think that's never going to go away because obviously the kids are going to keep growing like older and older. And I think just having that mindset that every kid's different, every family is different, every mom is different, how they want to raise their kids. Yeah. And just accepting that, the way you want to raise your kids is the way you want to, what works for you and your family. Yeah. And I think that's like what I had to try to learn on myself too, is just reminding myself that, especially too, with Milestones, developmental, like Mela didn't start crawling till she was like later. Yeah. And it's like I would hear like other moms say, oh, my child is already walking, or they're saying words, or like
at
they're
like 9 months.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, is there something wrong with my kid?
Yeah, of course.
Like but
then we'd always get back to that space of Mela's on her own schedule.
Yeah.
In her developmental. Like we definitely noticed there was more cognitive development first. Yeah. Than her physical ones. So like motor skills and things like that. So it really is. I mean that speaks a lot because I'm sure a lot of other moms, feel that way too.
Definitely.
And it's finding that way to accept that this is how, your path is and how this child's schedule is, Man, that's tough.
Yeah, it was really tough, especially like sleeping schedules.
Yeah.
And it's like, I remember I was getting so frustrated when Mela wouldn't sleep through the night, and I would, have other friends, like their babies like sleeping 8 hours a night. I'm like, damn, I wonder how that feels like. It's just literally being pregnant, being a mom is a whole learning process. Even being just a parent in general. Yeah. Every day is just a learning process. And
even more so, I respect our parents and parents in general. To raise another person to raise the best people that we can in this world. You know, it's a gift, it's a blessing.
Yeah.
But it's also one of the biggest challenges I've ever faced. And we're just beginning.
Yeah.
You know, so whatever's in store for us, we just know we've always made this point to each other that we're going to do our best.
Yeah. I mean, just talking about having another baby, it's just thinking about, damn, going through that whole process
Starting
again.
over.
Like just thinking about, it's obviously more like the labor part. That was the hardest thing I've ever been through in my life. Yeah. And just thinking about if I want to go through that again, of course, it's like without a doubt I would, but just being nervous to feel that again.
Yeah.
It's like, damn.
Are you at that place yet? Because I think people have said like, yeah, you go through so much pain, but then your love for another child overpowers that already.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I remember I'm never going to forget that pain, but like without a doubt, I would definitely like go through that just to have another kid again. But it's like, obviously I didn't get the epidural the first time, but it's like, damn. I mean, you saw how
I saw it
you
all.
were the only one in the room. So
I freaking saw it all. And I remember thinking at that time during labor, it was like, shit, we're going to go through this multiple times. Like, this is a lot.
I'm going to go through this multiple times. What do you mean?
Yeah, you know, there was a different challenge that I went through when you were in labor.
Yeah.
And
it was hard because you were the only one there.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad they allowed me to be there because I know at that time for certain hospitals,
we were worried about that.
They weren't allowing even the fathers to be there.
Yeah. And one of my friends,
that's crazy.
Like her husband wasn't able to go until I think the baby came out, like the whole labor process. She was by herself.
See.
And I couldn't imagine like
it's just the hardest time.
Yeah. Like having that support system is really, really helpful. And especially like, you know, the things that I went through during labor, like
small adjustments we had to make and you know, this happens and then we have to make it, you know, have to make an adjustment or decision.
Dude, yeah, having to push for 3 hours and the freaking nurses and doctors telling me don't push when I have to freaking push. Like,
I think you said that was the hardest part,
That was the hardest part because, dude, I mean, of course, like they have kids, so they know, but it's like, what the hell you want me to do? I have to freaking push this baby out.
Yeah.
How can I, the fact that I'm fighting against it, like holding it was like the most painful thing ever. And
that's when I explained that to people that like you started making these like very motherly, like natural motherly, like sounds. I don't know how to describe it.
I didn't know how to describe it.
Where you were
too,
like,
but
you were really birthing a person at that point.
Yeah. And that wasn't even when I was pushing, like
you were holding
pushing.
You were holding the push.
Yeah.
And you said that was the hardest part.
That was the hardest part. Because when I was pushing with the contractions, it relieved that pain. Yeah. So it felt better.
The only way I can try to understand is like you had to take a really bad dump and I'm holding it.
Do that times 10.
I mean, I get it though. I mean, I know that I don't know if that sounds insensitive, but dude, that's all I could really compare it to. And yeah, I would imagine if you multiply that by 10, that sucks. So
hell yeah.
I mean, it's a beautiful thing though to witness. And I mean, obviously that was one big thing that we got a lot from. I mean, not a lot of people. I mean, there's some people that never got to see their child be born. Yeah. And I was thankful enough to see. I literally saw her be born.
You didn't get traumatized?
No, I didn't. Luckily, but to see life happen that way, and all the fears that I had, you know, with your health and everything like that, wondering if you could even have kids, and wondering if your body's going to be able to take it to grow a child and then give birth. Seeing you accomplish that without an epidural, without any medications, it showed me the actual capabilities of human beings and how beautifully made we are, and how you have to really trust our creator that we were made to do things like this. And when you did that, and we tell people that you did it without an epidural, people are shocked. And you know, knowing you're such a quiet person in public and stuff like that, you really stuck through it. And we kind of made that decision early on, where it's like you said you didn't want to have any medications or anything.
Because I was like hearing, you know, the risk and benefits of it.
Yeah.
And I just felt like, me personally, the benefits of not having it outweighed the risk of actually getting it. Yeah. And I just, had to stick through it no matter. I didn't know how bad the pain was going to be. I just put my mindset before, okay, I'm not going to get it. But during, I thought about it because the even nurse asked me, like, are you sure?
Yeah.
There's like that time to where if it's too late to get it, that's why they always made sure. But I was like, no, I'm okay. And then I honestly was surprised myself too. Because I mean, there's times when I do have a high pain tolerance and not, but the fact that I was like the worst pain of my life, I mean, I surprised myself too. And I felt, it's crazy because you can see like what we're made out of. And that's what I wanted to see for myself and prove to myself that I could do this.
Yeah.
And I was also worried too that after pushing for 3 hours, they're just going to cut me open because it was taking too long or I wasn't able to push her out. But dude, they're ripping that shit open. Sorry. Yeah. But yeah, it was amazing, but just crazy.
That was an experience for sure.
And I would definitely go through it again. But I mean, this is not going into detail, but I think one of the hardest parts too of the beginning of having a baby is just the recovery. Like down there, it was tough. It was painful, and I literally I don't know how 3 months is like good enough, having to go back to work after 3 months. Yep. Like I don't even feel completely myself. So yeah, it's just crazy. But here we are now with Mela being 16 months and look how far we've come.
The thing is, we can talk about it now because we've been through it, and I think this is a good recap, and it's kind of our journey being parents or becoming parents. From preparation up to now, where we're thrust into this role, and we're both still learning it. It's not that we have all the answers, and people should listen to us for that. It's more of this is documenting our journey in life.
Yeah.
And I would say a majority of the people on this earth are planning to be parents someday.
Yeah.
And not to say that we have all the right answers, but our experience, I think your experience can help a lot of women, a lot of mothers. And just the perspective alone and how to prepare for things and being ready for the unexpected because we really don't know.
Yeah.
No one knows.
And same with me too. Like I've heard different stories from different moms and it's helped me.
Yeah.
So I feel like just sharing like real life stuff and, the good and the bad, it helps me talk about it. And, I hope it helps other moms too, like preparing the ones who are pregnant, preparing to give birth, that there's no right or wrong. You just got to figure out like what works for you.
What's best.
And I think the biggest thing too is just when unsolicited advice is given, when like how to raise your child or, like when you're pregnant, like, oh, you shouldn't eat this or that, just advice that doesn't help. I think that was also kind of frustrating too.
Like unsolicited, like people would just give you advice without,
either when you're pregnant or having a kid. Just the advice from people that doesn't really help or pertain to you or like you don't agree with or they're just telling you to do this because you have to. I think that turns a lot of like moms off too, like or just people off. And I think that's one thing that I've learned, that you don't always have to listen to what people tell you. And I don't think it's the best thing to give people advice if they don't ask for it.
Oh yeah.
It's better to just learn on your own. But if they ask you, then give advice. But if they're not asking, then don't even bother telling them what to do.
And that's almost about everything in general.
Everything, yeah. And that's what I've learned too, is that you learn on your own. If you need help, ask for help. And that's when you help somebody. If they're not asking for it, don't give advice,
Yeah. If anything, this is just one part of our journey.
Yeah.
And we're still learning more and more every day. Things change and Mela changes every day. She grows a little bit more every day. We learn something new every day, and whatever's in store for us, I hope and pray that we continue to try to do our best to make those adjustments, to learn from it, to grow, and to be the best parents that we can be.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, on that note, since you have baby fever, we should just make the second one now. All right. Thanks for coming back, babe. This is obviously a long-standing story. that we're going to be able to tell.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You know, this is totally out of my comfort zone, but
you're getting more comfortable with it, though, I can tell. All right, babe.